Good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, as you know, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And today, talk about fun, I drove into our driveway and my son, who he adopted from Haiti, brought home his big truck. And I often tease him. I'm like, yeah, you're my redneck son.
Yeah.
Because it's like all jacked up. It's got a lift kit and it's blowing smoke. He goes, yeah, Dad, I can roll coal. So that's what I came home to. And I walked in. I said, so you finally got your truck back? And he's like, yeah. I go, yeah, I just called the tow truck to have it hauled off. He's like, oh, you're crazy, Dad. So, but anyway, so I'm super excited too, guys, because I have a guest, as usual, who I've been trying to get online for a couple of months now. His name is Erik Allen. He is also a fellow podcaster, MMA podcaster, and just all around good dude. I've been following him for a long time. Welcome, Erik. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me here, man. Truly an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining me. Yeah, I've been following you for quite a bit, and Erik is super passionate about MMA. In fact, you had or do you still have a MMA clothing company called Top Rated MMA?
I don't have the clothing company anymore. I launched that in 2012. And then in 2017, when I started the podcast, I kind of shut down the apparel side. I was doing onesie twosies, but that's it. I mean, I have my own heat press and things like that. So I just kind of do onesie twosie things. And then at the end of December 2021, I signed off on Top Rated MMA's podcast, do 256 episodes, talked with over 200 fighters from around the world. And now I just focus on the Erik Allen Show.
That's super fun. And what is the focus of the Erik Allen Show?
It's where I talk with entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. And it's talking with, I want to hear their story. I want to hear these guys and gals that have been on my show of, where were they born? What was childhood like for you? What did they do to get to where they're at? What are they doing right now? What do they got coming up next? And, I've been blessed to speak with guys like Ed Milet and Brad Lee and Bedros Keuilian and Jim the Rookie Morris and, Tim Story, Eric LeGrand, Ken Shamrock's been on a couple times. So, founder of Tap Out, Dan Caldwell, just been blessed to speak to some truly amazing people.
Yeah, so everybody that's an MMA fan's going, oh man, I wish I could hang out with you for a while. So no, that's fun, man. And I think I like what kind of the implication there is everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody started somewhere. And I think a lot of times we look at where people are today and we don't see the process of what it took them to become who they are today and achieve what they did. And I think especially from the lens of being a father, I think a lot of times dads are looking at other men and going, well, I'm not like him and I'm not like him. And wow, his relationship with his kids is fire. And man, I have a train wreck of a relationship with my kids and my ex. And there tends to be a lot of comparison instead of going, all right, I like what I see in him. How do I emulate that?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
So talk about your journey as a dad, because I love your actual profile on Instagram, blessed with a beautiful wife and 2 rad kids. So let's talk about being the dad of 2 rad kids, because a lot of people just say, I got 2 kids.
Yeah. It's been fun, man. My daughter's 12, my son is 8, and to see them where they're at today and where they've grown, just in their own selves and kind of figuring out their path and what they like and don't like and things like that. It's been so cool to kind of see. And they love to love on people, which is really cool. Like, they're the kids that will go find that kid who's sitting by himself in the lunchroom. They're the kids that will find someone who's sad and go lift them up and go make them smile, So I'm very proud of them. They do some just amazing things. And, my son plays baseball. I've coached his baseball team for the last 4 years. So it's fun. We're about ready to do that again. We're in the middle of winter camp right now, which is great. And so it's just fun to be a dad, And I think, my childhood was crazy. I came from a broken home. I saw a lot of physical abuse to my mom. I had to fight my mom's boyfriend when I was 13 years old. I had to, hit him in the head with a cast iron pan twice to get her off. Split his forehead open, split the back of his head open. And what did that get me? It got me kicked out of the house. And so that sent me on the path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life. And, so my dad growing up, he was like adventurous dad. He would take my buddy Dave and I literally take us to dumpsters behind big stores and throw us in there and say, go find treasure. That was a typical Saturday morning, and like we would go out in the middle of the desert where people would dump stuff and say, go find treasure. Right. So like he was adventurous like that. But, my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. And I decided when I got married, when I met my now wife, that we were going to break those chains of divorce, abuse, rejection, and, addiction that really like attacked our family on both sides for many generations prior, and not even many generations. I think it was our parents were kind of like the broken generation. So they've all been married and remarried 6 times, I think, or between the two, sides.
Wow.
Where our grandparents, they were married for 50 plus years, and had that solid marriage. And so I really came into this marriage going, I'm going to be that dad that's there. I'm going to be present with my kids. And I'm going to be that husband that stays with my wife. And we've been married for 17 years this year. And man, it's just been a fun journey.
That's awesome. I have a really good friend that I have mad respect for. Very similar situation as you. He, as a young kid, very abusive home, and he actually became, he studied MMA, Kung Fu, and he's like, look, I just made the decision at 13 that I wasn't going to allow my dad to beat on my mom anymore. And it took me 2 years to get the strength, the confidence, the size, and the know-how to actually face my dad. And I think there are a lot of homes, fortunately, that haven't experienced that, but there are a lot of homes that have experienced that. And to be a kid at 13, 14, 15, trying to figure out how do I, one, protect myself? How do I protect my mom? How do I get out of this situation? And long term, how do I break this cycle? That mental challenge as a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, even younger in some cases, you're putting a load on the shoulders and the heart and the mind and the spirituality of a young kid that's barely trying to figure out how he's moving through the world. Yeah. And yet he's faced with such complex challenges from the very get-go. So looking back, how did you find that fortitude and that determination to go, I'm going to break the chain?
Yeah, it was a long journey, man. Like I said, when I got kicked out of my house, it was I had 3 months left of my freshman year of high school when my mom kicked me out. And by the time I was 18, I was arrested for having a bong, which was illegal in the state of Washington now. But at the time in 1998, when I was a senior in high school, it was not. So I got arrested. I had to put on a black and white chain gang outfit on 24 hours in jail. And I was kicked out of my dad's house 2 weeks after I graduated high school. He said, you can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out. And so between the age of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times and then hit bankruptcy when I was 21. I was $28,000 in debt. And throughout that time, I was battling those addictions. I was battling, the alcohol and drugs and things like that. So, I mean, for me, the moment was I was working in the music business and I got laid off, and it was like my dream job to be there. I don't know how to play anything, but I was working for Universal Records in their mailroom and I was tracking sales. And I got laid off after my 1 year anniversary. This is during the time of Napster. If people remember Napster. Yeah. Killed the music industry. And I was working at Starbucks at night and I was really depressed. I lived in this really ghetto apartment. So I get off work and go get a 6-pack of beer and drink myself to sleep every night. It was the same thing every night. Didn't have any friends. And one night this girl walked into Starbucks and said, "Hey, we've got this cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going?" And I was depressed. I had no friends and she's good looking. Yep. What time?
I'm there.
So I went down there and I ended up like knowing all these guys that I had met from the other side of the state. So I grew up in Eastern Washington. I had moved to Seattle out of high school, and this is where this was happening. And so up there, I was like, man, I haven't seen you in 4 years. I haven't seen you in 5 years. So I truly believe that it was in that moment that God was starting to plant seeds. Well, he had already planted seeds in my heart for a long time, but I think in that moment is when I started to realize that there were seeds that were being planted for me to kind of make a change in my life. And it was about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I woke up after a night of party in my buddy's basement, and I felt God say, dude, you're going down this path that's going to end your life real quick. So you need to start making some changes. And so I decided in that moment to give my life to Christ in my buddy's basement. I just did it myself, and I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up, and I got her voicemail, and I said, hey, I wanted to say thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see her at the store sometime. And a month later, we were dating, and like I said, now we've been married for almost 17 years.
That is so cool, right? Because you never know what an invitation is going to do for somebody's life.
Yeah.
A simple invitation. Would you like to come with me?
Right.
And I think a lot of times opportunities are missed because we're afraid just to extend the invite, to extend a hand of fellowship, to extend a smile, to say, man, you know what? Can I put my arm around you? Can we just go for a walk? And it's amazing how seeing somebody for who they can become changes the perspective of how you treat them today.
Yeah.
You know, I think about, you know, a man that I worked with for a couple of years while I was going to college. And the guy, I mean, flat out was a jerk. I mean, he was rude to everybody. Nobody wanted to work with him. He and I were working the midnight to 8 shift. And the guy, I mean, every day he came in with a chip on his shoulder. And nobody wanted to work with him. I'm like, I'll work with him. And they're like, are you serious? I go, yeah, I want to work the graveyards anyway, so I can study while I'm working, and I can deal with them. And so I just went out of my way every night to go in, and I would buy him a Mountain Dew. I'd bring cookies, you know, that one my wife made. I just made it a purpose to go, you know what, I'm going to treat you like, you know, a good man.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because for like about a year I'm doing this, 10 months to 11 months. And one day I came in and he was just uncharacteristically quiet. I mean, not rude, just quiet. You could tell something was different. And so I went around and did my round, and I came back about 2:30 and I sat down, and he sat down next to me, and he's sitting in his chair, and you could tell he was uneasy. And he goes, Jody, why do you like me? He goes, I recognize I'm a jerk, but why do you like me? And I told him, I said, you know, Del, yeah, you're a jerk.
Yeah.
And he laughed. I go, straight up, you can be so rude and unkind to people, but I see the man that you can become, so I treat you that way. And guess what? You're becoming that man. And so it's amazing how one person can put you on a different trajectory as a father, as a human, you know, anything.
Yep.
So let's talk about, I mean, because you had this just life-changing, and well, actually, I want to go back before we get into your kids, because you talked about having addictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of men that I've talked to with over the years, they struggle with some kind of addiction or have.
Yeah.
Right? But when I really get to the core, the reason why they have addiction is because they have unresolved problems in their heart.
Totally. I agree. Yeah.
So how, I mean, obviously you had the point, right? But you said that God had been planting seeds. So there was kind of a cultivation that was preparing your heart for this one event. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I started smoking pot when I was about 14 years old. I was going to high school. I was smoking pot before school, at lunch, after school. And then it was like, okay, cool. I can smoke some hash. I can smoke some opium. Oh, you've got mushrooms? Cool. You've got acid? Yeah, let's take a couple hits of acid, man. You know, I even got to the point where I was in high school where a hit of acid was $5, but I could go to the store and buy a bottle of Robitussin DM cough syrup. It has morphine in it for $2.50. So I could go do that, half the cost, and get the same effect. And it wouldn't be as long of a trip. So we would do that. Me and my buddies would go in the store. We'd all buy a bottle of Robitussin DM and go to the park and chug a bottle of Robitussin DM. And it was the craziest thing ever, because the first time we took it, we're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, we're not feeling anything. And then 30 minutes later, we're all puking our brains out. And then all of a sudden we wake up out of this thing and we're just tripping, man. Like, we just did stupid stuff, man.
Yeah.
And so throughout that, like, I was never a big drinker until after I got arrested. I was on probation for a full year, and I got arrested for having that bong. And they could have tested me at any point throughout the next year, but they never did. But I was so scared. I didn't smoke any pot for a full year, but I just didn't. It enhanced my drinking. So I started drinking a lot more, and, got into some heavier stuff. I moved up to Seattle, and, a buddy of mine said, hey, you want to do some drugs? I was like, yeah, I'll smoke some bowl. He's like, no, man, let's do some drugs. Like, pulled out the cocaine, right? And so got into that a little bit, and so I battled that stuff, man, all the time. And I got to a point where I was kind of relying on it all the time. If I wasn't, I smoked a lot of cigarettes at that time. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 13 years old, and throughout, probably 10 years, I was smoking cigarettes. And so I always had something that was numbing that pain, numbing that childhood trauma that I went through. And it wasn't until after I got married that, my wife and I, we spent the first 5 years just us. We didn't have kids. We just wanted to get to know each other because we both came from that broken home. Yeah. And we knew what we didn't want in marriage, but we didn't really have a good example of what we wanted in marriage. And so for me, I brought a bunch of junk into the marriage of, like, being defensive all the time. And, hey, don't blame me for that. That's not my fault, things like that. And I went to counseling because I was like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I so angry? And I'd never done that before, but I remember sitting in this counselor's office. I don't know who the person was now, but man, I probably went for a good 6 months, but I just, like, booger crying, trying to figure out why I'm feeling these emotions, and man, it helped so much to get it off. And then here we are talking on this podcast. I never actually shared my story publicly until I was 39 years old. I'm 42 right now, so I held on to a lot of that for a really long time. So I think, that it was that point where I was battling those addictions, and God would just plant these seeds, man. He kept me safe many times. I always said, I'll never drive drunk. And I was a stupid guy that drove drunk a couple times. And I just remember, like, waking up going, how did I get home? I drove, right? It was blackout, drunkenness, and I wake up in my apartment going, man, how stupid am I that I did that, and could have changed the trajectory of my life forever had anything actually happened, you know. But God, I think, just protected me in those moments. And so I truly believe that, we all have a plan. We all have a purpose, man. And if we can hear that voice and we can acknowledge that we are destined to do bigger things than we think, man, the door's wide open. And so once I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me don't define my future, man, I just took the action to start making some changes and hopefully make an impact.
I love that. Man, that's such a humbling story. And I think it starts with, truly being authentic with yourself. Because like you, a lot of men are carrying their story. And I'm not saying everybody needs to share it at 39, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to be able to face it yourself. Mm-hmm. And when you can face it with yourself, then you can make the changes needed to become the man that God intended you to be and that he can see that you can become.
Yep.
So let's tap into being a dad, because you got 2 kids, right? Yep. So what has been the biggest challenge for you being a dad of 2?
I think the challenge for me was to learn how to be more patient. Because I was always wanting stuff now. Like, I'm the now guy, right? Like, hey, if I want to go do this, I want to go do that, right? Like, I'm up early at 4 a.m. I'm up and ready to rock and roll 6 days a week, and then my kids, I had to learn, like, these guys take a little bit longer to get ready than I do. And they're going to put on the wrong pants, and they're going to have to go put on the wrong shoe. And then I'm sitting on the couch going, okay, twiddling my thumbs. Like, when are we leaving? Like, so I had to learn to be more patient. And I think in the early days, I was kind of like, it would frustrate me a little bit, but now I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. I'm more go with the flow kind of guy, but I think that was the biggest challenge for me as just being a new dad. And then also just wanting to protect my family. That was something that it was all about myself before I got married. And then all of a sudden I shifted that mindset and going, okay, this is my family. I will protect them emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever I can do. That's now something that I have to step up and not be selfish and start protecting them in those areas.
Yeah. So what has been, because you have a daughter and a son.
Yeah.
So have you found that there's a different dynamic in your parenting with each one of them?
A little bit. I mean, my son is very gentle-hearted, man. He loves cuddles and, and he's a little bit more on the athletic side. He loves playing baseball and pretty much all sports. And but my daughter, like a little bit more independent, just turning 12, but still very much loves the cuddles and things like that. But the way that I talk with them has to be a little bit different because it is dad to daughter and dad to son. Like my son, I can be like, hey, what's up, man? Like give him a little shoulder pop, right? But my daughter, I'm a little bit more gentle with, and hey, let's go out there. And a really cool thing that my daughter and I have done every year for probably the last 4 years is a daddy-daughter dance. And that's just been really cool for us to just connect her and I. We go out on a date, we eat dinner, and we go to her school, we dance. And I look like a fool, but you know what? She loves it. So it's just cool moments like that I get to experience as being their dad.
Yeah, I think more dads need to just embrace looking like a fool.
Yeah.
Because your kids are going to laugh. They're going to make fun of you, but they're always going to remember what you did.
Yes.
Right? I mean, my kids, we've always tried to have the home where everybody's invited, right? It's like, invite your kids. I'll make pizza. We got the trampoline. Yeah. And so many kids are like, wow, your parents are different than ours.
Totally. We are that.
It's like, in fact, it was funny because a couple weekends ago, we went down to Utah Valley for my daughter's, they had a big banquet for the Wolverines women's volleyball team. They won the WAC tournament and stuff. And so we went down there, and Kaylani's like, yeah, when I told all the team that you were coming, they're like, yes, the party's going to be fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty fun because when we went down to the WAC tournament this year, right? I mean, we're like, all right, how do we get these parents off their chairs? Mm-hmm. So Judy and I went out and bought some green spray paint, and I spray painted my beard, and she did her hair, and we walked in that first day, and people were like, oh my gosh.
Right.
By the end of the tournament, we had everybody in green. So
yeah. It's that you got to do something like, just be funny and do things out of the norm, man. And I think we're a little bit different than other parents too. Like our kids don't have access to iPads or phones or computers or any of that stuff, man. Like there's so much junk out there. And so like we watch movies on Friday night as a family, and we might watch one movie or cartoon on Saturday morning, but that's it. Like our kids, they're very focused on, they love Legos, they love art, they love, sports. So they're very much off screen, and it's very much different than a lot of our friends, that have kids.
Yeah, one of the things that made a significant impact on our family, I think, is every Monday night was family night. So we would have dinner, we'd play games, we'd have a spiritual thought, we'd sing songs, sometimes we'd go to movies, we'd have kids teach a lesson, we'd play charades, and I mean, all these different things, but the kids knew that Monday night was family night. Yep. Right. And it was really fun when they were younger. But then as they started getting older, like into high school, all of a sudden we had, cross country and basketball. And all of a sudden, then our family activity moved from the house to their events.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So we went as a family to everybody's events, and keeping that family unity and being everybody's biggest fan, I think really cemented each other's hearts together.
That's huge.
And I think that's critical because you got to spend that time together as a family.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. I think it's so important to have that family time and, just distraction-free stuff, but even for us, like, yesterday, it was my daughter's birthday over the weekend, and we weren't sure what we were going to do. We had a party for friends over, but then like as a family, we did this impromptu visit to the theme park up here with the kids, and it just turned into an awesome, fun day, and here's a funny thing is God just continues to bless us. Like we show up expecting to pay $100, and we walked in the door, and there's this couple here, and they saw us walk in. They said, hey, we got these 2 free passes today. We'll just give them to you because we don't need them. And it was like $100.
Awesome.
It covered both our kids and everything for the whole day. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. Just like God just continues to open up doors for us to have, cool things, man.
Yeah, that's super fun. So what if you're looking back, right?
Yeah.
And you're looking at your entire journey of, going through your experience as a kid and your experience as a dad. What are a couple things that you think are absolutely critical for a dad to do, whatever stage of their journey they are in?
I think as dads, you should date your kids. And I mean, like, take your daughter out on a date, take your son out on a date, and we go out and my wife and I, we said once each month we'll take our kids out on a date. One will be a cheap date, one will be more a sit down, nice, expensive date, and then we'll swap the following month. And so we do that. And so I think it's so important to date your kids, to get to know them one-on-one, and go do something that they want and surprise them and do some fun stuff. But it's so important to have that just connection for you and them. And, you know, for my wife and I, like, we've been married for 17 years. We're not every day of 17 years is like rainbows and cream puffs, man. Like, it's just part of the journey is disagreeing and having these challenges, right? And so our kids, they see my wife and I argue or disagree on things. But here's the cool thing. They see us slow dance in the kitchen. They see us kissing. They see us make up from that. They know that through that yuck that kind of happens occasionally, that we make up when we get through that, and then we're not going anywhere. They don't have to have that fear of divorce or anything like that, because they know how solid the relationship is between my wife and I. And yeah, I'm going to do stupid things where, you know, I cause an argument or something like that, right? But they see us make up, and that's so important, I think, for our kids to just see that, you know, we love each other no matter what, no matter the yuck, what's going on, we still love each other, and we're still going to, you know, make up and make it a good day for them.
There's so much power in that, because I think a lot of times couples don't want to show their kids that they're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That dad lost his cool, that mom lost her cool, and there was tension. There's real power in showing your kids when you say, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was not acting as well as I should have as your husband or as your father. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, it's like, look, you know, straight up, I am not a perfect dad, but I try to love you perfectly.
Yeah.
And that loving you perfectly includes me messing up and owning when I mess up.
Right.
And being humble enough to go, you know what, Dad wasn't the best in that situation, and I'm sorry.
Yep. Absolutely.
And kids need to hear that.
Yeah,
it's
for
okay.
Sure.
But here's the thing. If they don't see you changing, then you're defeating the whole purpose.
Yes. Yep. 100%.
Right? Because I think there's a lot of dads that go, well, I apologize. Yeah, but did your behavior change?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So I'm super excited to you know, just see your continued journey. I was scrolling through your Instagram earlier today, and I want to invite everybody to go connect with you. It's Erik, that's Erik G. Allen, and that's why I thought his name was Gallon, not Allen at first.
Right.
But you have a lot of really straight up motivational 15 to 30 second pieces that really make you look inward. So before we tap out, why is that inward look as a dad so important?
Man, it is so important to work on yourself, whether that's in personal development, or if that's in a relationship with Christ, or if that's in a relationship with whatever, right? Like, if you're not growing in yourself and constantly getting better, you can't see it because of the camera. But in my conversation with Ed, I have this thing behind my wall it was an acronym he said to me, and it's CANI, and it's constant and never-ending improvement. And so if you're not constantly, improving on yourself, you can't relay that improvement to your kids or to your family. You can't go through life just being ho-hum and expect to be an awesome dad or an awesome husband, right? You've got to be improving, and you've got to be learning. And so I think if you can work on yourself first, right? And sometimes that throws a generation or, people off, like, well, no, I have to take care of my family first. Well, you do, but you also have to take care of yourself internally so that you can be 100% present and be able to take care of your family. Because if you're off, if your brain is off, like if you think you're having a bad day, I don't believe in bad days. I think you're either having a bad 15 minutes or you're just like being a wino and you're just trying to drag it on, right? Like, you stub your toe on the door, you're not having a bad day, you had a bad 15 minutes, man. Get over it and go, right? So it's all about our attitude, man. So if we can have a good positive attitude throughout the day, that kind of like blends over to our family. And so you have to work on yourself, man. And if you're 100%, then you can give your family 100%. But if you're only walking around 50% and you're depressed and you're being mopey, man, that's going to reflect on your family.
Well, and I love the idea of being positive, because I think a lot of guys confuse positivity with fakeness.
Yes.
Right? You can put on a good smile and recognize that you're going through a challenging day. But my positive attitude is, yeah, right now, this 15 minutes of garbage, or this hour that I just went through with a bad customer or a bad experience with my kids, that can all be changed by changing my mindset and going, you know what, I'm going to own me, and I'm going to take control of what I can, and I'm going to move forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, it's amazing what just changing your mindset does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because we often talk about, half glass half full, half empty. I like thinking about it like at sunrise, right? How many times have you gotten up early in the morning and the sun is just below the horizon? Is it dark or is it light?
Yeah. I love that.
Is it dark or is it light? And yet you're there in enough light to move forward with the hope that you're going to get even more light.
Yeah. Yep.
So put ourselves in a situation where we have enough light to move, even though we may not have all of the answers yet.
Yeah. So good, man. So good, dude.
Well, man, I want to thank you for taking some time. I mean, you and I could really tap into your brain. In fact, we probably ought to do a second round. But so how do people get in touch with you? Because I think, like I mentioned, your Instagram, but is that the only way people tap in?
So erikallenmedia.com is the website. Again, it's ErikAllen, erikallenmedia.com. You can get a hold of all of my podcasts that I've done on that website there. Go subscribe to my YouTube channel, man. Would love to see you on there. I'm always posting, my podcast on there, but I also show, some fun videos or motivational videos on there as well. But so big on my website, big on Instagram. If you shoot me a DM or comment on any post, I respond to every single one. And so love connecting to it. Sometimes it gets crazy, but yeah, I respond to every comment and every DM that comes through. So, if you have something or have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM on there or just comment and I'll respond back to you.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you once again for being my guest and want to be respectful so you can go spend some time with your family on this, your wife maybe, since it actually is Valentine's Day when we're recording this.
Right.
So, guys, I want to remind you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't checked out my new book, please go check it out. It's on Amazon. Learn to Dance with the Currents of Life When You Feel Like You're Drowning. I'm telling you, some days you feel like you're drowning, but learning to move with those situations. I got 15 different stories of my experience in water, either under it, on it, surfing it, you name it. I'm trying to find it. Whitewater rafting, some way to draw some lessons to help you guys through your life. So thank you guys for joining us, and we will check you same time, same bat channel just next week. See ya.
Thanks, Jody.